What's happening, everybody? It's your big homie Doe checking in one time for the one time. Back with another episode of Donuts with Doe. It's a rainy day here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, but we always gonna make it shine inside. That's just what we do. And today, we got somebody that shines behind the scenes
Man,
from, let me get this correct, Albion,
Albion,
Michigan.
Albion, Michigan, right?
He's worked in the industry for a number of years. Whether it was working behind the scenes at Sony, Universal Music, Capitol, Concord Music Group, but now he's here with his own company that he calls Six Square Academy. And this guy that I'm talking about, y'all probably know him if you've been in the Nashville music scene. We're talking about Jay Lawrence. Give it up for Jay Lawrence. I know we don't have a live audience, but still, y'all give it up while we on this live stream.
Appreciate it, boss. Appreciate it.
Man, so what's going on, Jay? Man, how you
Man,
been? How you been
hey,
living?
hey, man, I'm so happy to see you in the space, and watching you grind over the years, and I appreciate you, taking time out your busy schedule to talk to little me.
And ain't no little folks around here. Everybody's important, bro. And the whole podcast is about people that work behind the scenes, and you can't get no more behind the scenes than Jay Lawrence with all the stuff that you've
Oh my
done.
gosh.
I mean, you work with artists, producers, record labels behind the scenes. You set up meetings for artists to be put on, and so these are the type of people that we want on the podcast. The type of people that you need to know because you might just walk past them and just like, who is he?
Right.
But not knowing that he's making major moves, he's opening doors that you can't get into without him. Not saying that he's a gatekeeper, but he can get you in the door.
But you know what? It's crazy. I spoke at a showcase 3 weeks ago, and the guy mentioned the gatekeeper word, and I've never thought about that. And he was serious about it. He said, "Are you a gatekeeper?" And I mean, we're talking about like he's asking me like the Illuminati, like, look, you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
nah.
And I was kind of nervous, but I'm like, I don't think so. But hey, if that's what you think. But yeah, that's crazy you mentioned.
Man. So let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
Take us back to growing up in Albion, Michigan. So usually it's most of the people I have on the podcast from Nashville. So I get to ask them, what part of Nashville they from and if Madison is out east and all that type stuff.
We can do all that.
But
We can do all that.
since we got a Midwestern
We can do
I
all that.
I messed it up. Midwesterner here today. We're gonna ask them about the Midwest and how that influenced your journey.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I was born in a little town called Albion. Um. Oh man, got my mind going back. So yeah,
Hey,
Albion small. Like I mentioned, Albion just got a Taco Bell probably 5 6 years ago. I guess so. It's that small.
wow.
You know what I'm saying? So,
A Taco Bell of all things.
of
Like,
all
Taco
things,
Bells be everywhere. They be
and
on
my
this.
grandmama called me about it too.
Wow. Baby, we just got a Taco Bell.
Exactly right.
They were lined up around the corner. Yeah, I know.
That's where it was at. So yeah. So I was born in Albion, and my dad was one of the popular musicians in Albion. He's a bass
Okay.
player, and so he's the rock star from that town.
Okay.
And so, and that stigma still rides out as today. He passed in 2020 at 56, but
Sorry to hear
still
that.
it's still there when I walk around, go places. People know, oh, this Jody's son.
Mm.
That's how big he was. But to give you a little story on that, him and my uncle, which was a bass player as well, um, they had a friend that was in LA, and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna get y'all into either it was Stevie Wonder or somebody's band. I can't remember. I didn't hear the story until after he died, which is crazy.
Wow.
But so it might have been Stevie or one of those guys, somebody big at the time. And they had my dad had $50 and my uncle had $50. So they were gonna ride with this guy out to LA because she wanted to get them in the band of the artist.
Mm.
Long story short, they get out there, turns around, she was a groupie.
Wow.
So
Things
they
groupies
actually
say.
stayed at the band's house of the artist, and um, they had to just figure it out
Mm,
way out there. They didn't want to go back to Albion because everybody was celebrating them.
right.
So my dad stayed. My uncle ended up going to Atlanta, and so my dad went into the funk lane, which he
Okay.
he did. If you go back and look at some of the old Soul Train when they actually had musicians on the stage, my dad was the bass player on a lot of those
Oh
recordings.
wow.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
my uncle went to Atlanta, and he went into the hip hop and R&B. So a lot of those old Manny Fresh bass lines, that's my uncle Tony.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay. Y'all see, look, this is why we have people like this on this
yeah, it's
podcast.
crazy,
We
huh?
getting gems
Yeah.
just right now.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So my uncle did Pink's first tour and Sync's first tour. He MD'd all those and did all that
Hmm.
production stuff. He's still down there, so he's still living. So he's still
Okay.
doing his thing on a different level, of course.
Right.
But yeah, so um I ended up coming in here while my dad and was on tour. Um, my mom ended up getting married, coming to Nashville. So I came to Nashville probably when I was about 5 or 6. So I
Okay.
can
So
still have those
okay. So
conversations.
you
So I
really
was
just
yeah,
you
so I
just
was
really a Nashvillean then.
yeah, oh
Really.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
Nashville to the heart, man.
Okay.
So yeah, I can entertain all those East and West questions,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I'm South Nashville,
South
so I've
Nashville.
always been in Antioch area. So that's you know, it's my space.
Lower Antioch, as some people call it, LA.
Yeah. So back in Lower Antioch, I was introduced to rap music. Um, oh my gosh. They were they are one of the first rap groups to go gold, Rude Awakening.
Okay.
Shout out to my boy Chris and everybody else. Rude Awakening was I hate to say it, but they were from some of the first white boys to do it as far as
Okay.
rap. So that's how I got introduced to rap music.
Hmm.
Like that, like independently, I would say.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. So
And around what time was this when you got?
this this was probably 93, 92, 92, 93.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I was raised on the R&B, pop, Michael Jackson, Shaka Khan. That's all my mom played in the house. That's all I knew before I moved to Nashville. So
Okay. So being introduced to hip hop through a white rap group
now
or
independently.
independently. Okay.
Independently.
Um, how did that like form your outlook on the beginning of hip hop? Well, it wasn't even like the beginning, but just from that angle, how did that shape your views on hip hop?
I mean, that to me told me anybody can put together music because prior to that, I knew, you know, all the urban stuff, but I had never seen it in that form in my face. It was always on TV at that
Right,
point. And so I seen these guys like really get to it. I mean, it went gold, and back then it was SoundScan. You
right,
know what I mean? So and we didn't know what that meant, but so they were the group that I seen independently that sparked my mind, like, man, these are regular people. All these people I'm seeing on TV are actually they were like this at one point.
right,
So
right,
that's what, kind of opened my eyes on that piece. Cause at the time, I'm a drummer naturally. That's how I maneuvered in the business as a kid. I was a drummer playing for different groups and stuff like that. And then I happened to get wind of their CD and in Lower Antioch. Back then, let's just be real about it. It was a lot of um Confederate flags on trucks and all that. I mean, we're in high school watching all this, you know what I mean?
right, right,
It was
right.
different back then. So, and
It wasn't the melting pot that it is now.
right, no, Antioch wasn't that.
Antioch was kind of well. I was here. I got here in 2002,
Okay.
so it was still a little bit,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
they was moving on now. You had the Hispanic people taking over Nolensville Road,
Exactly.
and then
Exactly.
eventually
Yeah.
we came out there.
Yeah.
So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand.
But yeah, so that's what gave me the idea of independency and really seeing it um in my face.
And from there, had you already been working in the industry as far as playing drums for different groups, or
Yeah, yeah. So at that point, I was drumming between church and playing for different people outside of church, and but that was my introduction to the independent scene. And like I said, it's probably 92, 93. I think they came out, and that put me up on obviously the Haystacks and all of them, Pistol and all those people kind of bled into all that. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, all these people are really out here selling out shows at these, different spots. And so yeah, that was my introduction to that side of the game.
so when you started drumming for different groups, was this in high school, middle school?
Yeah,
When did that start for
middle
you?
middle school. Well, I had been playing since I was 8, but at that point, it's when I started really, people started calling and saying, "Hey, can you play for us?" And start getting to that thing.
Okay. And around the time, like, what was the hip hop scene in Nashville as far as um, I know you mentioned Pistol, you mentioned Rude Awakening. So what else was popping back then in those days?
And parties. Um, Obviously, I was only old enough to get into the teen clubs, but being that I knew some of those people, I was able to see, how they were maneuvering studio sessions and things like that. But um, to me, that was a great time. I didn't really understand it wholly, but the vibe was crazy.
And would you say that this would spark your interest into getting into the industry?
Definitely, definitely.
I know, like you already mentioned that your pops and your aunt was already in the industry,
Mhm.
so that had to have some influence. But for you to experience something on your own, I just wondered if that just drew you all the way in. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, what happened was I was in the studio session, and this guys come in with these suits, and they started kind of moving the scene a little bit. I'm like, well, who's these guys? And my dad told me, say, hey, look, they're that A&R from the label that we're recording for their artists. And I said, oh, okay. So that sparked me initially, but then as I got to early teen, I want to age myself, but I started to see and learn a little bit. So at that point, I said, well, look, by the time I'm a senior in high school, I think I want to do this and go into the music side of it.
mm,
But my parents were like, well, just stick with the drumming, go to school, do this and do that. So initially, I went to MTSU.
okay,
So this is my stump ground around these parts up here. But I started off as a percussion major at MTSU.
okay,
And for that first year, but me being a natural gift of percussion, I didn't take well to going into that environment with these other musicians that are like up here.
mm,
And so I was like, you know what? I'm gifted in this. I'm always gonna do it. Let me learn this business side.
okay,
And so that's when I made the transition to the RIM program at MTSU.
okay. And at that time, a lot of people don't realize that MTSU is probably the second best music as far as recording industry. They're probably like the second best school in the country. Maybe the first.
I, I would say, just to get a little bit closer, I would say I'm not. I hate to downplay. I would say the second best in Tennessee, but top 10 in the country.
Okay.
Because you got Berkeley
You got Bert. Okay.
and all
The
them.
thing is, this has been my argument with people. Okay, you got Berkeley, but we know everybody's gonna try to rush to California. That's because it's industry, all type of
Mhm.
industries.
Yep.
But when you get outside of California, where else are you gonna go? You
I
know what I'm
got you.
saying?
I got you.
And you think about it, it's kids that come all the way from like Washington, Seattle, Washington, talking about Washington State, just to go to NCSU for the RIM
You're right.
program.
Yeah, definitely. It's
So,
it's definitely a great program. I had a great time in it. You know, I wouldn't change anything going back. And so yeah, so now I'm at MTSU, and um I get introduced to my roommate. His name is Emika. For those who know locally, Mika was a dope rap artist for years, and we're in the dorm room. I'm getting used to college, and he's up. Light is on. I'm like, man, what is this dude doing? And he's like, man, I rap. I was like, oh, okay, let me go sleep. Turn the light off.
Man, I remember Emika. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I know you do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. That's
Mika was the
crazy.
first artist I worked with. So during that time, I said, well, look, let me hear something one day. Because in my mind, I'm like, I've met hundreds of you. You know what I'm saying? I didn't really want to hear it. Another rapper is all I need to hear at that point. And I'm just 18. So I kind of tell you how I moved prior. And so so I ended up meeting this guy in the rim class. He's like, yeah, I produce and I live right down around the hall from you. I said, okay, cool. I'm a drummer. You know, I wanted to get in production at the time.
Right.
So went there, I basically started producing and I said, well, I got somebody that can lay some vocals if you cool with it. So I went down, got a mic. I said, man, take one on paper, let me hear something. And I made a track and he blessed it. And so which is crazy. That's what his mean. That's what his name means
Yeah.
uh in
I think he's
Nigerian.
Nigerian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what his name means, Amika. So yeah, so it just went from there. And then a friend of mine that was in the dorm heard what we was doing. He's like, hey, look, I want you to come out to Memphis. I got a studio session down there, and I want you to meet some people. So I'm like, cool. Long story short, that studio session was 3 6 Mafia,
Mm. Okay.
and it was Crunchy and all them there, and I helped a lot of them do their publishing paperwork.
Got you.
And so, and that's just to nutshell it. And so I'm thinking like, okay, well, these people don't have their paperwork done. I can just
And the,
imagine back in Nashville.
and this is 3 6 at what point? Are we talking
So this was
relative relatively
so
records?
Pat, I think Pat had just released at that point, but it was so many of them that we never got to hear, and it was a lot of them that was there in that session that they were ruined, you know.
Mm.
But so that was around when Pat got locked up, Project Pat got locked up. It was
Okay.
around that time. So we talking like 98, 99. That's that window. He's buzzing at this point. So
98, 99. So that had to
yeah,
be.
I
I'm
can't
trying
think
to
of
think of the
yeah,
records
I
that
can't
was
think
out. That
of
was either Mr.
um
Don't Play. No,
it was the
no, no.
one he released one before Mr. Don't Play, which
Getty Green. Getty.
it might have been one in between them two.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
believe. I'm not sure, but I'm just guessing. So yeah, so after I come back from studio session, I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of guys in Nashville that's running into the same issue. So I came back and guess what? There's a lot of people in Nashville that need help. So that's when I started moving around through the industry, helping this person, helping this person. Now people are not sure what I do, but they're like, you're a manager. I need a manager. And I'm like, I've never been a manager, but I can do it. You know what I'm saying? So then I come back to Mika and he's starting to kind of do some things. So I'm like, well, let's get in the studio and work on some songs. And he starts recording. So that's when I became manager of what people knew. So
Okay. And from there, you obviously started managing Emika. Um, and so was that your introduction or your way into the industry as far as uh,
independent.
independently?
Yeah. So
And how were you able to maneuver at that time?
um man, I was using instincts a lot back then. Um, I knew a lot of basics, but back then it was that point where you could go to showcases or go to seminars and you can hand your CD to people and build off the CD.
Right.
So even back then, like I remember me and Amika going to a seminar and we met Bobby Dash, which is Dame Dash's little brother. He was the head A&R at Rockefeller at the time. So we was able to just walk up to him and put the CD in the player and put on headsets and listen to the records like right there. And so that was that time, you know. And so there we just started building, and you know he did a lot of great things and during that time, but uh I mean we were still limited on information, and even though I was still in school at the time and transitioning to the point where I was working at Sony as well. So but yeah, so I got my worst and bad experiences, and I hate to say it, but he was kind of like my scapegoat, but he was
Your guinea pig, the
yeah,
testing.
yeah, he
Is
was kind of like my test, and we did well through the little test. I would say, not where we wanted to be at, but everything happens for a reason.
right.
So
And you mentioned that you worked at Sony. So how
mhm.
did that get set up for you? Was that through an internship or
Right. So I was one of those people like I didn't really like school. Like most people not gonna tell you they like school anyways.
right?
But my thinking was, my aunt said, "Well, I want you to look at college from a standpoint of networking as well. So you're not going to be in one place with that many people too many times in your life.
Right.
So use that to your advantage." That always resonated with me. So I ended up getting making an internship for myself at Sony. So um, I pressed some buttons and just
I told you he was opening doors. Yeah, you know,
man, bro,
opening doors as hell. Sometimes you got to kick them in.
I
Sometimes.
like being on that campus. It was fun going on parties and everything else, but I had to get somewhere, and that gave me that platform to get to Sony, and I got to Sony. Uh, so I moved to Texas, and I worked in distribution. Of
Mm,
course, distribution back then was the CDs,
physical.
right? So yeah, I got to moving in that space, and um, you know, it, it was a lot, but um, that was that time in the industry. Um,
So at Sony, what were you doing there in particular? Were you just
so
ground level stuff or
yeah, so it was a mixture of I came in and I worked for delivery for the distribution department, and so when the packaging's done, I'm delivering packages for them to deliver UPS, take them to the mail room, doing that, and then I got on distribution team where I was setting up the scheduling for deliveries for releases at that point. And so I stayed in that space for probably 2 years.
so what was the biggest release that you can remember that you were a part of or working on back then?
So the as far as the direct project was the first Scream tour. They did like a I guess it was like a package CD for the tour for people to buy when they come to the arenas and stuff. So that was like the first big release that I did, or the one I can remember the most was the Scream tour because we
And
actually got to be a part of that.
and Scream Tour, who was all a part of that?
That was Lil Bow Wow. Was it?
Was it
Was it
B2K?
B2K? I don't know if they were there the first one. I can't remember, but we dealt more with Bow Wow because he was in the Sony and Columbia was together at that point.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that was our main focus. But yeah, so I dabbled with Sony for that period of time.
And going from Tennessee to Texas, how what kind of culture shock was that for you?
Golly, bro, that was different. So South by had just started. South by Southwest.
Mm.
It was a year in at that point, I believe. During this time, I can't remember. This is so weird. Now we're in between 98 and 2002, I believe, somewhere in there. I think it was a year in South by Southwest. And so everybody's like, "Hey, we're going down to Austin. You want to come with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a conference, whatever." So man, I went down there, and it just that took me back to '98, seeing all these artists out on the ground, CDs, hand to hand, T-shirts, grinding. So I really seen how that Texas, you hear it, Texas is different. It's bigger. Everything's down here is bigger. And that really showed me how that Texas grind is, and really learning that that culture down there is just different.
Different. They move different. It's I will say it's a hustle.
Yeah, oh
Like
yeah. Oh yeah.
like people people didn't realize when Slim Thug came out with already platinum, and they were probably looking at him weird, like, bro, you a new artist. What are you talking about? You already platinum.
Right.
They don't understand that there's so many like rather rather big cities
Hmm.
in Texas. You can go from Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, even the college towns like Lubbock and College Station, and you can do shows and not even leave the state and
Yep.
go platinum.
And that's
And we're not talking about the million records now, but we're talking about being independent and keeping more than half or half of the money that you're making off
exactly.
off
You
a
hit it on the
CD.
head. You hit it on the head.
So Yeah. So they living like they platinum artists, and they just really in their own backyard, just doing what they got to do, hustling, getting their music out, getting heard. They already got an instant, distribution from the mom and pop stores.
All that
So
different.
yeah.
And nobody understood that when I came back. I couldn't get one of the artists to really understand that piece. When I came back from there, that's when I got boots on the ground here, like for real. Like, okay, I seen that, so I got to develop that here. And it got to the point to where even I was working with artists here that I was the person getting into all the events for free, walking
Mm.
straight in. I couldn't even get an artist in; they had to pay.
Wow.
So I said, look, we got to change the mentality. Y'all got to get on the ground and work, get to these events, meet these promoters. And so at that point, I'm like, oh man, it's a lack of music business sense here, and I had to establish that with somebody. But it's really hard for that to connect when I always tell people the difference between Nashville and Atlanta is that in Nashville, unfortunately, it's still a dream of an artist getting in position. In Atlanta, it's a realistic because their homeboy across the street have made his boom and he's come back and grabbed them, and we haven't had that here, especially not at this time. You know what I'm saying? Because this is about time Buck was touring with G Unit at the time, when I came back, and he was scaling up, but everybody here was still fishing. And
Right.
so I said we got to change this narrative. So I tried to do that with a few artists, and you know,
But even if we just stay in the state and you go to Memphis, I remember because I have family out of Memphis. I remember going down there like around like Christmas time and going into like CD stores. And when you go in there, you would see local displays like, whoever was the hottest artist in the city at that time, whether it was Al Capone or whoever,
mhm, yeah,
they had, they displays in the stores. You would see them like in the mall. You know what I'm saying? Like you could reach out and touch these people. You would see 3 6. I think at one point LeChat was working at Chick-fil-A. You know what I'm saying? So like
yeah,
it
that's
wasn't
crazy.
it wasn't, strange to see people out here really promoting, even to the point where the Memphis guys would come up here to
Hmm.
Nashville.
Yeah,
I remember meeting these cats from Orange Mound. They Chevy painted orange. They single they had put out was like, "What's your favorite color?" Uh, yeah, so they was,
that's
and
crazy.
dude, I still remember that because they was out here pushing themselves. Like, bro, like this is what I
Yeah,
do. Listen to it. If you don't like it, whatever.
yeah,
I'm just out here doing what I do.
yeah. And at that time, man, it was only like a few people. I remember one guy, and shout out to my guy MUG
Mugs a million.
Mug. He was the first guy that I seen here that had that mentality. And I mean, he's out in the middle of Jefferson with a bullhorn selling CDs,
Mm.
in the parade selling CDs, everywhere. Everywhere I went, Mug was there. I said, man, I gotta meet this guy, man. And we connected, and he instantly pulled some cards. Hey, look, I got this going on. If y'all want to go to North Carolina, go here, go there, link with me. We hopped on board with him and made some hits with him. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And so, it just he was one of the ones that had that mentality that I'm gonna get it no matter what. I don't care who see me, lose or win, you gonna see me. You know. So yeah, shout out to my guy Mug.
Okay, and we in Texas and we coming back to Nashville. And what is your mentality? How has your perception of the music industry changed coming from Texas and seeing the independent grind and coming back to Nashville? What is the first thing on your mind to do as far as changing what you see might be a problem in the Nashville music scene coming back from Texas?
It was the business side, and whenever I would go to different events and talk to artists, I would always use the B word. The B word is Brandon.
Mm.
This was 2001, 2002. I'm talking about Brandon back then. But nobody really understood that concept. It's like, okay, so now we're at the point where the internet is there. I think probably MySpace, I would assume, or maybe transition into. Facebook or something at that point. I'm not sure, but so now the web is attached to everything,
Mm.
and we need to brand or to get people in position. Um, it's about your name. It's like McDonald's. I always use McDonald's as a idea. If you're driving down the street, McDonald's is you see to go to Arches, you know what you're getting.
Right.
Ain't no ifs, ands, buts about it. You don't even got to stop. You know in your mind that's what you're getting. So I feel like an artist should have that same brand. And so it wasn't so important about the music. It was the brand of the artist that would stick and resonate with the people. So that's what my mentality was and what they use different. But they use branding with merch, stuff like that. And when a lot of artists here really in the merch like that, a lot of the artists that were moving wasn't putting out merch. So that's what changed the mentality right there of getting into that.
So you come back home, and who are some of the first people that you started working with? Where were you
Mm.
working?
Oh my
Uh,
goodness, man! I don't want to leave nobody out, but I'm gonna try. Um, while I was working with Mika, I met a dope artist named B. Howard, um, and he was to me dope personality, um, lyric, song structure, picking tracks. So I worked with him. I worked with him in the Mika for a while. We had a whole little team of people, and we traveled and did some things. So directly with B Howard. But over the years, I've dealt with some of everybody, man.
and shout out to B Howard. He just put out a new single,
Oh
WTS.
yeah,
So
that
yeah,
WTS, yeah,
shout out to
man.
B Howard.
Shout out to my boy Nice boy on that track. So
Nice, nice. Been yeah. Actually, I gotta get nice up here. Anyway,
yeah,
that's
definitely. Yeah, man. Nice one of the dopest producers. I also did a lot with him too and helping him out in a lot of things and just being a dope human, as a person and so skilled and very underrated. Very underrated.
when you see that man actually work a machine, and for people that don't realize what I'm talking about, a machine is the actual like music production uh piece of equipment. It's not like a machine, but that's what it's called. Anyway, when you just sit there and see that man work that machine, yeah, it's art, bro.
Yeah,
It's art.
it is. His skill level is just different, man. And I don't. It's a lot of other dope producers in town, but man, that guy right there has reinvented himself. He took some time off, and he didn't come back with the same sound, but he doubled his, to me, his style uh, on his talent. And like a lot of people don't get that second chance to really step out once they take, some time off. But he redid the sound and made sure his sound was there before he released again. And man, the stuff I'm hearing now is just it's crazy.
Yeah, I already know.
Yeah, that dude is dope, man.
So you got B Howard, you working with Nice and Mika.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's see. Man, let me go down the line. Um, we'll give you a period of of a lot of artists. Even with Rude Awakening, I dealt back with them. They were going to release back out. Chris Nim, um, Pretty Shy, Lil Bree. Um, Golly, man, I want to leave somebody.
hey man,
just the vein I'm talking in. Just
right, right,
just
right.
Nashville in general. I've been on the phone with some of everybody, just doing whatever I can and whatever I felt, whatever resources I had were theirs if they wanted to use them. That's the way I operated. I'd operate like, okay, well, this is just not for Mick and B Howard. This is for whoever really, wants to get it and get into a different space. So, but yeah, it's a bunch of man.
And at this time, I know you worked for Sony. You interned there, and when you came back to Nashville, where are you at now? What?
So the internet hit, and I'm sorry. So when I left Sony, I came back and I started at Universal. I
Okay,
started on the publishing side, and I had to get what I can get because obviously Sony was an internship, and I had the experience, but I didn't. That's how they looked at it. So I started working on the publishing side. So I started doing general day to day things, and whether it was making coffee for somebody, just wherever I can get in at, because I knew I need to be in that space to really filter the artist through there if that door is open. And so I went through there and worked with them. And at the same time, I'm really out here independent, like hitting everything because I'm hungry at this point. And um, so I worked on the publishing side and learned it. And then was able to move to the recording side. And that's where I started dealing with the A&R structure of really learning what that's like. Because I always wanted to be A&R, but that never presented itself.
And I want to stop you right there because I want people I want people to get a full understanding of what a A&R
Okay,
is and what
okay.
they do.
I was about to say that too.
So
So yeah.
so can you give us a little detail
Okay.
about what a A&R's job is? I know,
Of
but
course. Yeah.
for the general public, because there's a lot of people that want this information. And
And I get it. I understand it. So A&R, when I was growing up, A&R would be the person that would develop the artist. They would sign the artist, develop, create whatever it was that that label wanted that artist to be, and wanted to put them in spaces that they couldn't. They taught them how to talk, interview, everything. So when you come in, yeah, you're talented, but we need to teach you how to talk, interview properly. So when I got in position to be in that realm, the internet had hit. So at this point, they're wanting the artist to come in. So now you're in the point where you're off, and ringtones was the thing at this time. Soldier Boy, all that was going on. So that's where we at right now. So now I'm telling artists, okay, look, we need to get these pre-production setups at the crib before we hit the studio, because we need to be thoroughly recording, because it's a lot of outlets. We need ringtones, and you're speaking about all those things. So at that point, the A&R started to change, where to me it changed to the DJ.
mm,
So whenever the DJ has a record in the streets, they can make those calls, and the A&Rs come at that point. So that's when that changed. And so at that point, A&R is just a liaison between the hot artist, not the bubbling artist, the hot artist, to get to the label at that point. When I moved into that space.
so we taking artist XYZ basically from the streets, and we setting them up with the label to say, hey, this is the hottest thing in the streets right now.
Hmm.
This is who you need to mess with. This is the reason why well, at this time it wasn't about followers and all that, but it's how many DJs is spinning his record,
Exactly.
how much
Yeah.
networking he's done, you know,
What the days?
shows he done packed out.
Hmm.
So, you know, get into a little bit of that. Like you said, it transitioned.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, how did you adapt to that transition with you being just, I'll say a company man?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
You
saying?
can say that. I would say this at that point. I had my first article done on me, which was the City Paper. I don't know if you remember the City
I
Paper
remember
used to
City
go
Paper.
around. So I had my first article that was put out, and I can't remember the guy's name that did the article, but he took the article and twisted it completely left field back on me. He had initially interviewed me for why do I think the artists aren't being able to get onto the radio here, which would be 101, and I think 1067 was here at the
All
time.
right, the Blaze. I
Yeah,
think that's what it was
exactly.
called.
Yeah, shout out to my man Taz. Still good friends with him to this day. But so that's what the interview was about in the paper. And when the paper come out, it was about me directly. I'm like, wow, he spun this back on me. And so I was kind of mad because we were battling with trying to get songs on radio at that point. Because remember, I'm boots on the ground.
All right.
I'm at Universal. I'm using all the relationships I can to try to get into that, get in with Cumulus and all these people. But so then it spun back on me. So now people are coming directly to me, and I'm like, well, dang, this is crazy. So now I get my foot in as a businessman because people know me now. So they know my face, know everything, and so now I'm like, okay, well, I need to use this, and that's when I started grabbing more artists because people were calling at that point, and so now I'm working with these artists, getting my skills tight, learning the business more, because now I got the platform and the resources at Universal at my disposal, and um, it just kind of bled from there where I'm really engaging with Nashville as a whole, linking with Gennaro and all the people at the SCAs and just doing whatever was going on. I was there. I was in the mix. People knew me, and I was like, okay, well, this is it. This is where I need to be at. And so at this point, I know the artists don't know the business, and so at this point, I'm trying to structure something where I can teach them about the business and use this platform that I was given through the city paper. And so, so yeah, so at that point, I become a entity, and I felt like I wanted to develop as many artists as I could that I felt like that was dope around town. So
And at this time, you still dealing with B. Howard. Who?
still,
What artists do you have?
B Howard is with me. Nice was on the transition, so I put in Nice for a minute to retransition him on some things, and try to help him get back in pocket. And I think that's where we was at this point. Man, this is good. This is like therapy.
Hey,
I can't lie. Like, man, these are good times just going through my head. So at this point, B Howard's still there. I transitioned to a girl named Finesse.
I remember Finesse.
Yeah. So
Shout out to Finesse.
I met Finesse. Oh, I forgot. So I told you I was gonna forget somebody. At this point, I met Juice and Yellow Boy, which we talked about Yellow
Yeah, yeah.
at that time. So I have Mika, B Howard, Finesse, and Juice and Yellow Boy at this time, I believe. And beginning stage of Juice and Yellow. And I actually met Nice through Juice and Yellow, actually, which is crazy. And I introduced Nice to B Howard and them from
Mm,
our relationship there
okay.
because everybody, I felt like everybody just had to have this, you know what I'm saying? And so, so yeah, so that's kind of how that timeline. And I skipped them out on that, and I knew that was gonna happen. But so yeah, so I got all them. So now with Finesse being a female artist, I was able to use my branding, and she bought into it. She like
Ah,
fully bought into it. Didn't ask no questions.
I
Said
hustle
Jay,
squad.
exactly. That
Yeah.
was created from that. So I said, look, we need a brand and we need you to run with it. Finesse understood the business side and she understood the artist side. And I'm like, I'm in heaven. I'm like, man, like this is what I've been looking for to work with. She understood it. A lot of times when I work with artists at that point, I was like, we need funding, got to have money. So with her, she was already structured. She had a artist account. She still worked, but had an artist account. She said, hey, look, this is how I funnel my money here. This is what I put in every week. And I'm like, this it's things like that this
Oh.
simple. You know what I'm saying? Like that's business. And so when me and her linked, it was over. Like, we can run the city. We finna run it. And she had a good run, ran probably about a year or two, maybe three, like strong, and using that brand, the IHS, that was the brand that needed to be pushed and people bought into it. I've seen people walk around with the shirt still to this day from time to time.
Right,
You know what I'm
right,
saying? Which is
right.
crazy. And so shout out to my girl Finesse. So I had a good time. And so then working with her, I used a lot of those relationships for the other people. So that made me stronger in that capacity. So at this point, I'm just kind of building up and got solid relationships. And so, but I used Sir Swift had a bowling
I remember
party every
that.
week.
I remember that.
And so I approached Swift and I said, well, look, I said, Finesse has a degree in communications and radio. I said, let's have her host, and that takes some load off you where you can just spin and coordinate the party weekly. Let her host, and let's see where it goes. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, if Finesse gets hold this mic, we're going to perform every single she drop, and we're going to get her locked in. And at this point, the bowling alley was taking off. Every Titan would be there every Sunday after the game.
Right.
Everybody was coming through that. Lindell White and all them at that time, and they were hearing our records. And now we got access. Now we got a couple hundred people weekly that we're introducing her to. So we was able to use that as a platform to kind of build a network. And after that point, we're doing shows. Those same people are showing up at shows now. They know who she is. That brand, everything was connecting. So, so she was one of the first ones that I had that really connected to that idea, Brandon.
Got you. And you said at this time you're working at Universal Music Group. And what do you, well, you said that you were just pretty much in there doing anything.
Right.
But where
Right.
was the first industry job that you got that you were playing an important part in the daily routines at the
So,
company?
so what happened was, that job with that particular branch Universal got moved to New York. And it was pretty much like, well, you either go to New York or you don't have a job.
Mm,
I'm like, at this point, I'm thinking I got this, be Howard, I got all them moving. I'm attaching to the city. I can't leave. I said, okay, it's whatever. So I started working at this magazine company, and there I was able to pick up an accounting skill that I didn't know I had,
mm.
and which was crazy. My mom was the accountant for my dad's band back in the day,
There you
and
go.
growing up, I couldn't even count change, bro. Like my mom was worried. As a
Wow.
kid, I couldn't. I couldn't count change for me. I count money, but not change. And so I picked up accounting skill, and this guy there, he seen something in me, and therefore I was able to learn accounting, uh, Excel spreadsheets, and all that type stuff. All those, and I'm like, man, I don't know where this going, but the job was so easy that I could hustle, and my manager was cool, so I could leave. B. Howard got a show, Juice and Yellow got a show, Finesse got something going on. I can leave and do what I need to do. I can travel. So at this point, I'm like, on my phone at work, you know what I'm saying? Er- Double screens, everything's going. I'm at work hustling, and so picked up the kind of skills. So I ended up getting back with Universal as working as far as North America tour financing.
Mm.
So I was able to take that accounting and use it for the music business, which is perfect.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I was like, man, this is so now I'm really in it. I'm not accounting is not my thing, but I had to pick it up, because we hustle. That's what we do,
Right.
So now I'm in the game. Now any artist that's on tour in North America, I'm seeing all financials come through. If their van breaks down, or if we book a session and the session is paid for, I'm locked in. You know what I'm saying? But I'm still able to do everything independently and still kind of keep some relationships going and doing some things.
Now, who were the big artists on Universal at this time that you probably dealt with or seen, come
Um,
through your screen at
e-
work?
Everybody, Cash Money, of course, Cash Money been in Universal forever. So,
Yeah, yeah. Our tour bus done broke down. We out here in Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah,
bro,
somebody send something through. Nah,
bro, them
but
budgets, them Miami studio sessions that they were booking. I mean, 90% they wouldn't even show up.
oh
You
wow.
know what I'm saying? So, that was kind of stuff that we were dealing with. The team I was on, it was probably 10 of us on the North America team. So yeah. So at that point, I was, I was in it, and but in my mind, I'm like, I need to get back to. I got to work with artists like directly. Like this is cool. I'm learning a lot and budgeting as far as music goes. And at this point, I'm seeing, like I said, the internet had hit a few years prior. So now we're getting into we were already at downloads. Now we're start talking about streaming. So I got to see that piece of it now.
Mm,
And I'm like, okay, well, it's different. I don't know who's calculating these numbers, who decides how, how much is one stream, who's deciding all this.
right.
And obviously, on the independent side, it's different. We come from a mindset of CDs in the streets. So how are we gonna hustle this streaming? And so that's at that point.
That's when that B word that you use gets pushed to the max.
Exactly.
Uh, because
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell y'all, as an artist, yeah, I'm going back to being an artist right now. I probably sold more merch than I ever sold music. And once you build a brand and people buy into it, they become fans for life. Like no matter what you do, you can
Mhm.
transition to,
Good gracious, so true.
I can open up a donut shop and guess what? Probably the first people that's gonna be in line at the donut shop was a person that bought a Daily Bread T-shirt way back in 2011.
Mhm.
So that's the whole thing about the whole aspect of
Hit it on the
branding.
head. Hit it on the head, bro. For real.
And with that being said about Brandon, where does the six square idea come into play during this time? Or
Mm.
has it even crossed your mind at that time?
No, not at that time. At that point, I was doing Next Step Music Group, and I felt like the biggest question with the artists is what's that next step. So I was branding that real heavy. That was my thing. Like everybody seemed like they were stuck and not making it to the next step. And you hire me, I'm getting you to that next step if you want it. And so that's what I was pushing at the time. And the six square um, idea came from, well, came 6 years ago, I believe. And like I said, I work with Juice and Yellow Boy. Me and Yellow Boy became business partners. Yellow got a job at Atlantic when they moved offices here at the time, and he was in meetings and really just tapped in, and he understood. But information getting, they didn't know that we had an independent urban scene here.
Mhm.
And so, of course, he calls me, and I'm like, "Well, look, see if we can set up some meetings and let's see what can happen." And so that's what he did. And anybody know Yellow, he is a savage. And so I knew he was gonna break his neck to make sure we figure out something while he's there. I already have my relationships from Universal Capital on my hip. I just needed him to get in there. So within his first month of the job, um, uh, we're already meeting with management at Warner and Atlantic.
Mm.
And so they were clueless. They love hip hop, but it was like we didn't know outside of the obvious people that we had come out of here. So I said, well, let us do a showcase, put a showcase together down at the bottom of the Warner Atlantic building because they had a big space in there. Well, it wasn't big, but it was space. At minimum, let's do that. They was like, no, why don't you guys get a venue and put together like that? We're like, oh, really? So now me and Yellow game planning. One of the guys that was Yellow's manager at Atlantic, our guy Scott come aboard. Scott's a producer on the side. Scott was like, "Well, I got a buddy that has distribution deal, and he likes what I've been telling him what's going on. So he's gonna fly in. We're gonna meet. So we meet at this hotel across the street from the office, and come to find out, he has distribution through E1 because he's dealing with a lot of the Chicago, a lot of the drill rappers at the time,
Mm.
like hand in hand, middleman in a lot of their deals and having a lot of placements. So So it says, look, if y'all can structure this right, I will get you an E1 and get you a deal. I was like, man, I said, minimum in day, we got a deal now. Now I can really do something for B. Howard Stands and all those guys that need that, older season artists. So he was like, cool, but we need some young guys. Okay. I know we know them too. So what we did was we reached out to artists, and it was probably 35 to 45 artists we reached out to. If 35 showed up to the meeting, and we basically told them what we wanted to do, and we told them what we could do, what we're not going to do. They all bought into it.
Mm.
So at this point, we're setting up for a showcase. We're going to fly in whoever, Universal, Capital, Warner, Atlantic, everybody. And we're going to give Nashville a stage because everybody's doing showcases, but there's no benefits to a lot of these showcases.
Right.
We got the resources. And so that's what we did. So that's how Six Square Company came about.
Okay. From that showcase, what was the outcome of that? What happened after the showcase that y'all had
So
arranged?
um, you did make it, did you? You went
No,
at the
I don't
showcase.
think I
Yeah.
was in the
Okay.
building.
So we did a free showcase at the back corner, and which is dope venue. Um, man, when I say that showcase was so packed, we did not expect that.
Mm.
It was so packed. They had the artists that haven't performed yet were performing in the parking lot for about an equal number of people that was inside, but a big crowd.
Mm.
And all this is recap on Six Square Company Instagram, and um, it was crazy. So in a nutshell, we did end up getting a number of artists to deal with Empire. So we flew in Empire, flew in um, Atlantic A&R and some other A&Rs, and everybody showed. Everybody was hurt, man. And I seen it.
Mm,
As soon as that first stage, I seen them up there. We had them back corner set up to where it's two levels, and we had the VIPs over on the right side, and I'm on backstage with the DJ, looking up at them, make sure they, intact, walking back and forth, make sure they're good. Yellow's up there working, and everybody did their thing, from Lil Bree, 615 exclusive, Lotus, Crimson, um, but at the end of the night, everything went well. The next day, we're taking one of the biggest A&Rs from Atlantic to the airport. His name is Brian Johnson. Took him before he got out. I said, "Who stuck out to you last night?" Now he said the girl in the girl with the glasses with the stripe outfit on. And we go Blasian.
mm,
No, Blasian.
yes.
Blasian wasn't even on the show. She featured on in within Lil Breeze or Two Live Breeze set that night, and she had one record. Never performed on stage for him. He did his three songs and introduced her. She came out. We had that on footage too, which is crazy. And I reverted back because I didn't know who she was myself. We didn't know. We just trusted Bree.
Right.
You know, Bree had couches on stage, trees, and I mean, he put a whole show on. Girls sitting on the couches, and so at that point, we're like, "Hey, call Blazing," like, "Hey, Bree, what's the number?" And we automatically, start working that play. So, like I said, we ended up getting a few deals with Empire, and putting them in position, which was great, man. It was a great time. Especially the Blazing where she was then to now. It's just like night and day, and she's
Right.
dope. I love Blazing, and she's dope, just dope as a female, dope as a person. And so yeah, so that's the Six Word Company provided that outlet, and we kept doing shows, and we were invited. We started connecting with the upper echelon of we felt like Nashville. We don't get on close to Music Row. I mean, close to Broadway to do shows like that often. So for us to get Cannery Row to do our second show there was big too, to be able to put our artists. And at that point, we have No Limit coming in, just random people coming in now, people we're not even inviting.
Mm,
Because once you start, how the industry goes, people are going to start talking. And so we had a lot of people show up to that showcase. And on that showcase, we had um, um, one of the dope artists that I really enjoy. Um, and man, I just went blank on his name too. But dang,
how you gonna be a fan and
I
can't even
know,
remember his
man.
name?
I just
Wow, Jay.
and I'm gonna tell you
Come
his
on,
name in a minute.
Jay.
I'm gonna tell you his name in a minute because I dealt with so many people during that time, man. Like I said, we had over 50 artists,
I
bro, that we
got you.
was trying to put in, and so but yeah, so we was able to move into space and break into some doors that hadn't been open for urban. It's what we started seeing what was happening. And so we ended up having a board and everything before we did next showcase. So the board would make sure we had the dopest artists. And we met some people like hidden in Vanderbilt and Belmont that we didn't know nothing about. That had,
Mm,
decent followings, but greater music and performed at the Rites of Springs and all kind of little places that we didn't know that artists existed. And so that really opened our eyes to a lot of things. And so yeah, so that's kind of the space we were in, and we was going through the motions at that point. Atlantic and Warner it's communication now. Now I'm working, but I have to limit mine because
right.
we
It's
got competition, you know what I'm saying? So, things get um kind of hairy when you start working in that space. And so
thin line.
yeah, it's a real thin line in how that goes. So but yeah, so that's that time. But that's what we felt like our giving back to Nashville was.
And now as Six Square has went from Six Square Company to Six Square Academy. What was that transition? What made you move into the space that you are in now? And can you break down what the academy part that's been added to Six Square is?
Yeah. So with the Six Square Company, like I said, we offered distribution deals to the artist as a backup to if anything were to happen with anybody that we brought in as far as the labels. And in that communication, the business side leaked through all these meetings that we were having with these dope artists. Nobody really understood the terminology.
Mm,
Um, I mean, it was like we was battling trying to get this done. And when you start speaking about masters and starts like specifics and contracts, and everybody's clueless to what's going on, and people start getting scared, and we couldn't really get people signed into or believing in the whole idea of signing to a distribution company because everybody's so used to going through with some of the independent distribution that people use.
you talking about just
This
like,
distro
yeah?
kid,
Oh, you talking about that the digital distribution
yeah,
type stuff?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
DistroKid and um, what's the
yeah,
TuneCore and
exactly.
okay.
Like all those platforms are good, but we want to introduce y'all to E1. They're a label with distribution.
And I think I think what scares people is they feel like they're giving up something, like giving away too much. But
Yeah,
you know, in business, you got to spend money to make money.
right.
So you got to give up some type of equity that you have in order to just get your feet planted in the ground, just to be
Hmm.
in it. And then once you do what you do, that's when you come back and restructure whatever you have. Is
Right.
you know, contracts are always meant to be broken. That's what what I've heard.
Oh, that
So
is so true. Yeah, and you're right. And so, we battle with that, trying to explaining them the business end of things. And so it was hard to get people in because they're like, hey, we can go distro kid and this and that. And then at the time, you have not United Masters that is coming up too, that is starting to say, hey, we're not taking masters. So we was like, okay. So at this point we're our hands are tucked behind our back, and so we shut everything down. It's like cold turkey. Shut everything down. So I had to rethink like what could we do. Over the years we tried to entertain a few different things, nothing really paying out like we wanted to. So Universal dealt with a company in Franklin that deals with mental health, and um, started getting mixed in that, going out there for meetings and different things. And I'm like, man, I don't see any urban artists in here, and this is dope. Like, this needs to happen because a few artists that I dealt with in years prior, they dealt with some mental health things. These people that I love to work with and had times with, but I seen them deal with something directly. And I was like, man, I have the avenues to really push this, but I understand why nobody's out here. So so now we skipped to up until 2019 at this point. Pandemic's about to hit, and I said, well, I got time to figure this out. And I reached out to some people, some social workers, and I said, look, I'm in the music business. I would like to have somebody on my team that can work with these artists and give them what they need. And so this past December, after I did my homework, uh, I was introduced to Evie DeBose, and Evie DeBose is a certified wellness coach, and she had been researching this for like 4 or 5 years as far as working with artists and mental health, and she didn't really have an avenue to get in there. And boom, now we meet. I got all the access that you need. So now we start Six Square Academy, to where I'm able to link with artists. One thing I've done over the years, like I consulted, but I never really promoted it, except for maybe probably when I did the article, I did some promotion there, but I didn't really lock in with artists as much, even though I know a lot of people need help. So now I'm like, okay, I can use this to actually promote that I'm helping artists and helping them teach the business side. when they're teaching the business side, I already know in my mind we're gonna fall to a personal level at some point
Right.
because a lot of people are not really hip to business. They're just going off of instinct, and it's affecting a lot in their careers. And so I was able to put together a 6 square company, and now I can promote. Now I can talk to artists and give them a platform to vent. From the guy that recorded their first song on his phone last week to the singer songwriter that's been established and having a mental war with her label, distribution, or whoever, and helping that person as well. So that's where a 6 square company bled into a 6 square academy now.
And what part do you say that your company plays in this industry now? With you see that there's a lot of artists that battle with mental health, and with the internet is there, it's out loud for everyone to see. So how do you think that your company will help artists get through these times, or whether it's you know
Um, a lot of times artists just need to talk and they need to be put in a space to talk. So what we're doing is um, I got a dope partnership with the company called Music Unlimited. And they're based out of Berry Hill and they work out of the Clearwater Studios. Um, I feel like the first thing I thought about where could an artist talk and open up at was a studio. I'm like, why would I put an artist in a clear room in an office setting and I put them in a studio where they're used to letting loose of what's going on up here in that mic? So now I can put them in that environment and talk.
mm,
And now I'm getting the real pieces of of what we need to talk about. And I think a lot of artists are real prideful and you know, arrogant out above because you have to be that as an artist, but there's a balance that's there to really be effective. And so now we're opening up, asking those questions that need to be asked so you can learn and to build that brand.
I think now with artists like J. Cole, um, Wale, even Kendrick Lamar, you're seeing people deal with their everyday life in their records. Not saying that back in the day that we didn't, but it was more bravado, braggadocious
Right.
type thing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not gonna let you see what's really in my heart. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna keep that hidden and give you this hard edge. I think a lot of artists now are developing their soft skills, and you're hearing more healing through the records. Even with a recent release from JID, he has a record on there called Cody Blue 31,
He is dope.
and I feel like more artists are opening up through the music. So, do you feel like that this is something that could actually be revolutionary as far as dealing with mental health in the music industry?
Yeah, I believe so, man. I just think, people have to really be honest and attack. Because I think over the years, when I grew up in the business, it was all about perception. And I used to preach that to all my artists. We have to look like we're doing something to get into spaces. And, as much as I preached that and they followed suit with that and believed in it to an extent. But what that did was back then that put them in weird spaces because that wasn't them. Dressed a certain way, carrying yourself a certain way. And and I've actually apologized to all of them, but that's how we was taught, coming up. Fake it till you make it,
All right.
if you will. So oh, I know one artist that I could speak on is a Lil Bree or Two Life Bree now. Um, I worked on one project with him where we had to create a character, and he jumped in and ran with it. And this whole time, I know that's not Lil Bree. I've been on it too long, but this is what I was taught in the industry. And so we got to create that facet of, this dope idea of this guy wearing the fur and got all these women. And it's tough to fit into those if that's not really you. So I feel now, even with him now, that's what you're seeing to Labrie, that's actually him. And now it's connecting.
Right.
You're hitting your button, he's on Netflix. He's doing this, he's doing that. That's him. And I love it. And so I think this could be a thing. You know, B. Howard sent me a dope record last week, and he's real vulnerable in that. And I've known B for a long time, and the record is so dope. To me, one of the doper records he had was Brown Liquor Music. That's the one that really put him in range to do some things that he did. And I think this song is the equivalent of that, but in a real vulnerable stage to be that with people. And so I think it could be a thing. I hope it is, but with a lot of street records now, a lot of people are with that being so popular. I still think people gonna hold in a pocket some, because they gotta sell records.
Of course. With what you have now, you established with Six Square Academy. What's next with Six Square Academy? Are you bringing in more artists? More? Are you bringing in more specialists, whether it be psychiatrists or just counselors? What are you what are you doing moving forward with the company?
Moving forward, I'm just really trying to structure um, to be stronger because um, when I first started promoting this, I got a call from an artist that was laying in a mental health facility in Franklin
Mm,
from the bed of the mental health hospital. And that right there changed everything for me. I said, this is crazy. This is deeper than what I even thought. So at that point, I said, man, I got to be structured a certain way, even as something small as a female artist. When you start going over into that lane, talking to them, you don't know what they deal with. We have an idea female artists deal with certain things that male artists don't deal with. And I said, you know what? I need somebody on my team that can be there for that female artist to really um, understand that piece.
right,
So we're going to continue to build and make sure every artist uh, get um, current information because the music business changed month to month. A lot of it just changes fast. And what's dope about this for me is that I could be able to stay current in what's going on because I don't know what they're dealing with.
right,
And so it's helped me stay sharp. I'm learning from them in the same process. So, my generation is a lot different from what they deal with now as far as music goes. And so I'm current, I'm learning this. Even we're talking about ASCAP BMI, the way they're doing things now. I haven't dealt with them in years, but now I know this is going on, that's going on. So yeah, so I that's where we're going to is be able to set up a structure where we can really truly support an artist. Now, as far as outside of that, honestly, I'm not sure. Um, but I'm here for it at the end of the day. As long as we can consistently support artists and we know if an artist that we work with gets offered a contract or whatever advertising deal, whatever, we know we've talked in the business. And this will be a continuous open line, even though after they graduate.
right.
It's going to be continuous communication because we're here to support them. So I just, we're building a team and getting stronger, building board members and all the above since it's nonprofit. So
Got you, man. Before we get up out of here, I got a segment on here I call Half a Dozen, and today's sponsor, I'm gonna call them the sponsor. Let me get back on the mic. I'm sorry, I'm trying to grab these donuts. But today's sponsor is Morning Glory Donuts out of Unionville, Tennessee. Yeah, way off in Unionville, Tennessee. I had to go see old Roscoe today and grab some donuts for this segment. And what half a dozen is just half a dozen of any topic that I give you, like your top six of, you know, It could be shoe releases. It could be,
Okay.
album releases.
Good. Let's
We'll stick with album releases.
okay.
What's
Oh
what's your
man.
what's your top six albums that's been released? I say in from 2020 to now. Your top six.
You know what? That's a good question, but that's a question I cannot answer
Wow.
because this industry focused on singles.
Okay, well, give me your top six songs. Then we could go with that.
My top six songs of 2020
Well, just from that year on to now, like,
on to now.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Where do I start? Um, I'll just put you in some veins of some artists. To me, over the pandemic, Kendrick had a dope year. Um, with singles that he dropped. All the female artists, every single one of them. Megan, um,
So that's
City
two people. That's
Girls,
okay. That's three.
all them. Let's see. Um, actually, um, whenever we'll talk about moments too, Jay-Z moments.
Okay.
Those first he's dropped in the last 2 years on whatever project have changed the thinking of guys like yourself that's lyrical, and spoke some things. So he's had some moments. Um, rest in peace to Young Dolph, man.
So we'll just go with moments. We'll say
Yeah, yeah,
moments since
yeah. I can,
2020.
I can, I can do singles, but I feel like there are moments that push the culture forward in the last 2 years, especially with the pandemic hitting us sitting at home streaming whatever it's being released. So Young Dolph brought some moments, and I really think he was heading to the upper echelon of the business with the next project that he was working on. So, who else? Actually, you know what? I'm really big on R&B.
Okay.
I'm big on R&B. Like I love hip hop and rap, but I listen to R&B more than anything. So I'm like Summer Walker, um, um, Pink Sweats.
Dude, don't get me started with Pink Sweats. I was like, I feel like I was one of the first people to be on Pink Sweats. Like, I even got like threads on
Oh
my
yeah.
Instagram with me and him going back and forth. Like, yeah, when you come to Nashville, I'll let you. Yeah, Pink. Hey, hey, like he
All that,
cold.
bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, all that. So,
feel
you
like a
know,
fanboy out here. I'm sorry. Go
yeah. I
ahead.
mean, it's dopeness, man. And a lot of these new artists that came across my table. Um, I want to mention my local guys too. You got Tim Gent,
Okay,
dope. Who else? Two Live Breeze, dope. Um, B Howard, Stan. Um, man, I go on and on. You got Liquid and them out here doing their thing. Um, there's a lot of dopeness locally, man. I love the local scene. Oh man, I love it, and that's what my passion is. That local scene, man. It's just helping these guys um, get into that, get in that space as much as they will allow me to push them forward. What I'm saying? So
got you. Man, well, it's been a pleasure getting to know who Jay
man,
Lawrence is from the
this
beginning, from
this has been
Albion,
this has been a
Michigan,
blessing. Yeah.
and to now with the Six Square Academy. Now, can you tell us where we can find you at? Online and your online presence, and
Okay. Sure. You can follow me personally on Instagram, the J Lawrence, THE J Lawrence. And you can follow Six Square Academy at Six Square Academy.
that's the
Uh,
number six.
yeah, I'm sorry, the number six in the Square and Academy. You can also follow Six Square Company because we still maneuver some things on that as well. So the number six Square Company or Six Square CO, I'm sorry, on Instagram as well and on Facebook. So yeah. So
Anybody you want to shout out before we get out of here?
man, shout out to all my independent artists out here getting it. Everybody in the academy that's locked in with me. So many dope artists. Man, let's lock in. Let's put on for the city. This is why I do it. I had a lot of artists from outside of the city reach out. So, but my heart is to get Nashville in position. That was the reason for Six Square Company, and it's the reason for the Academy to propel these artists to the next step. So, shout out to everybody in the Academy and all my independents.
Yes, sir. And that's been another episode of Donuts with Doe. Thank you, Jay, for coming through and telling us about Six Square Academy. You can find us at Donuts with Doe on Instagram and at Donuts with Doe on Twitter and on Facebook. You can follow the Spread the Positive Network on Twitter and not Twitter, but on Instagram at Spread the Positive. And if you take a picture of this here QR code in the background, you'll be able to pull up all the information you need. And again, it's been another episode of Donuts with Doe. Another great guest on the pod.
Man,
And
enjoyed it.
and we out.